Welcome back to the Overthinking Podcast, where we take all the fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle chaos in your brain and help you finally make sense of it and put it into action.
And today's episode is part 2 of all the questions, concerns, and chaos heard directly from you, our listeners. But first, we're going to play our favorite little game. And instead of this or that today, this is actually one of the questions from you guys. And this one was a little bit more objective, and I think that it's more fun to play for this or that. So if you were to choose fuck, marry, kill between sex, money, and conversation in a relationship, what would you choose?
Well, as we know, all those things are important, right? Especially in this economy, money is important. But I think I differ. Like we've talked about this before. I think I differ a little bit from you. Like I think conversation is number one. I need to be emotionally stimulated by you, by my partner. And friends. I need to be able to have a conversation. Like humor is number one for me in terms of attraction, whether it's friends or romantic partners.
Yeah.
I think that sex closely follows that at my second spot, which means money is the kill spot. So I think first I have to marry conversation. I got to fuck sex, which is perfect. And then money, I guess, is a kill in this situation, but it's still important. Like you need to be able to survive and you don't want to live your life in feeling unsafe. But I think that the other two are so important for longevity in relationships.
Totally. And I think that some of the, you can learn how to be good at having sex, and you can learn how to be good at having sex for your specific partner and become more intuitive and more connected through sex. And you can learn more. I mean, there's so much cool stuff coming out about sex now. And same thing with money. Like you can learn to make money. That's not a fixed trait. Conversation isn't either, but I think that there's so much more like life and trauma and experiences wrapped into whether someone's good at conversation with you or not.
Yeah.
And so I think if someone's just okay at sex or someone just has a little bit of money, that's not as big of a turnoff to me if someone's like not good at conversating with me or like just awkward, like your vibe doesn't flow. So
yes, you definitely probably have met people in your life where you're like, I just don't connect with you, or like you have completely different walks of life and you're like, I don't think we're going to be friends, and that's okay.
Yeah. But it's also, if I'm going to fuck, marry, kill, it's going to be conversations that marry for sure. And I think it's kind of silly because these like actually ended up like lining up well. Okay, well, let's dive into our first question. Question 1, this is from Sarah. My diet is pretty much in check, but I'm still bloated all the time. What can I do? And as your local IBS girly, I would love to take a stab at this one. There's a couple things we can do, but really with bloating, it comes down to it's a sign from your body that something isn't sitting right? Something's not quite relaxed. And so we can look at food hygiene as a primary, like an easiest way to tackle if your bloating is really just coming from not necessarily what you're eating, but how you're eating. So a lot of times I'll have clients, and particularly women, for whatever reason, come to me and say they feel bloated. And I'll tell them, how quickly does your lunchtime take? And they'll be like, oh, I eat lunch in 10 minutes. I'm like, well, how much food are you eating? Like, how big is your plate? And they'll be like, oh, standard size. Like 10 minutes is not long enough. You're not chewing your food all the way. So stop taking too big of bites and not chewing your food all the way. So chew your food smoothie to a smoothie-like consistency so that like wad of food can travel down the football field length of intestines that you have. Because they have these little fingers and they pick it up as you go. But if you just swallow a big chunk of food, it's going to go down your stomach like as if a snake was like swallowing like a rabbit hole, right? It's just going to sit in your stomach and create that like sitting feeling. So that's one reason. Another reason is adjacent, but if you're eating in a distracted environment, like if you're rushed, eating in the car, you're probably not chewing all the way, but you're also probably in a fight or flight mode. And then conversely, being in a rest and digest mode, that's really the only time that we're hormonally primed to digest. So the big takeaway there is like when you're about to start your meal, is your laptop open? Are you stressed out? Are you freaking out? And honestly, TikTok? Just scrolling TikTok. I mean, for me, I like to eat with people. And if I'm not eating with people, it's so easy to eat with my phone. So
Totally.
instead I'll just like turn on a podcast or turn on a song. So I'm still kind of getting some of that stimulus, but I can
What I've been
still.
doing lately is reading an ebook on my phone because it feels like healthier for my brain. And you still get like a little bit of that dopamine. You're connected to your phone, but it's like more positive than just scrolling TikTok.
And you can be in a rest and digest mode consciously while reading. And
Yeah.
honestly, even while scrolling, but I think that the quality control is just so different there.
Right.
And I also think that if you are like, yeah, I have to work during lunch or I have to eat while I'm picking up my kids, then even just a simple awareness of it by bringing like a little bit of box breathing before your meal can be just like the magic ticket in 30 seconds to get you to digest better and
I
avoid
think
bloating.
it's also worth saying too, like, yes, what you're eating is important. Like if you're constantly eating, like obviously this person's Sarah said she, her diet is in check, but what does that mean? Like my coaching hat immediately comes on. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like
Yeah.
everybody has what they deem as healthy, right? Like I think we tend to think like, oh, chicken, broccoli, rice, that's all healthy. But if like your vegetables are raw or not cooked enough, like that slows down digestion, which can be good for some people. But if you have a sensitive stomach, like you have IBS or Crohn's or something, that you may need to consider like cooking your vegetables a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you're introducing fiber into your diet without hydration, like that's going to be pretty important because you need the water to enhance motility and get things flowing. So that tends to be something that backs people up. So yes, it could be some of the foods that you're eating, but what does healthy mean? If it's a food that makes you feel funny, then it's probably not appropriate for you, which inherently is not quote unquote healthy, right? Like healthy is kind of subjective. It's often this like deemed as golden chalice that other people have that, if I'm not perfect, then I'm not healthy. Well, we have to be able to understand ourselves and what sits well with you.
Yeah. I think you touched on something really important here, which is that if someone thinks that their diet is like really on check and like really truly believes that, right? And when you say like for the most part, it's like to me that shows signs of like, okay, well, there's maybe some things that we can like some rocks we can turn over and see like, is there room for us to even improve it more without making it feel like an overhaul of your nutrition? Like if you're checked in for the most part, and then that one day that you're not checked in is like, the traditional cheat day with like a 4x4 from In-N-Out. It's like, okay, well, we know what's going on. I don't think that's this person, but I think that we all have those little guilty pleasures that we want. And sometimes even just as simple as like switching what the food is or how you're eating it can be, a huge change. We don't even need to go down the rabbit hole of like how to do an elimination diet. But if you just simplify your meals a little bit, it can also help you clearly identify clearer if a certain food is affecting you, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think it's important to say, like, to your point, like, pay attention how you're feeling within the few hours after you're eating a meal. Like, I had a small bout of allergic trigger with avocado recently. And it was because I was so stressed out that my body decided to react to avocados. And it took me a few meals where I was eating avocado toast to pinpoint down what exactly it was. But after, a week or so, I would have my avocado toast. And immediately after, I would have the most intense pain, also feelings of bloating. And so I had to take that out for a little bit, managed my stress in my professional life, my personal life. And probably about a year later, I was able to eat avocado again. So it may not be directly related to allergens, but it's often related to how stressed we are in our lives and mismanaging that.
Stress in our lives, like from like a chronic standpoint, but then also in like an acute standpoint, like eating your meal in like a stressed state, even if you're, Deepak Chopra and you're eating your meal while you're stressed out, you're still going to get some of that bloating. But yeah, I think we covered that pretty well.
To be realistic too, like we're not going to just like meditate before every meal. Like we don't really have that kind of time in this late stage capitalism, but you can be realistic of like, okay, maybe let's, make a point to open a book or, sit down and actually like enjoy the food that you're eating instead of trying to do it all on the go, which, you and I both are always on the go. Like we've talked about how many times we eat a piece of meat out of a plastic bag. Like sometimes that's just what it is. But if that's your reality for 5 meals a day or whatever it is that you're having, like we need to do some reevaluating. So
yeah. And it might just be one meal. Okay. Choose your breakfast or choose one meal that you typically feel bloated around. I think that was a great call out.
Yeah. So
All right,
moving
Kelsey.
on to question 2. This one's from Anonymous. How can I spot reduce tummy fat?
You can't.
Next question. Just kidding.
No. But being in a caloric deficit does help. We know that is the main way that we can lose body fat and then specifically belly fat. We know that tummy fat can be stubborn. We know that there's a lot of other reasons why we store body fat relative to other places of our body. Like my forehead doesn't have any fat in it. Why is that? Right?
Yeah.
And your midsection has to protect your organs too.
Yeah. And women especially tend to hold weight in our midsections and lower bodies because of reproductive reasons. There's just the hormonal reasons at play. So that unfortunately is just like a genetic gender component. But the things that we can do, right, are lift weights a couple times a week, 3 to 4 to preserve muscle, get stronger, have a more toned or defined frame.
Be more anabolic as well.
Right. And if you want to develop an area like your midsection or your lower body, try increasing the frequency of those areas. So if you're doing 4 sessions a week, maybe you're doing a core and lower body 3 out of those 4 every week. Also eating enough protein to complement that exercise. So that way you're remaining satiated. We also know
especially if you're in a caloric deficit.
Exactly. Yeah. You want that protein number to be as high as possible so that you're not constantly hungry, especially in a caloric deficit. We also know that protein has a higher thermic effect of food. So it's going to take a little more energy or ATP for your body to digest it. Yeah. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, I do. I think sleep and meat are 2 major things that people don't put enough weight on. And honestly, right now, that's like my biggest focus is steps and sleep. And I have noticed a huge change in just like how my body is processing my food. Like my digestion's a lot more consistent when I'm sleeping consistently and when I'm like walking and moving, especially like walking after meals. I feel like that really helps with that like belly fat feeling where it's really just like bloating or it's like food sitting in my gut. I feel like getting out for a walk after a meal just kind of helps right size that feeling of like fullness and bloating.
Yeah.
And I also think food timing can be important here too. Like conversely, if you don't eat breakfast or you delay eating for a long time, you'll feel like lean because you don't have any food in your stomach, and then you eat and you're like, oh, I always have bloating and belly fat. And then maybe it's late at night and then you don't walk after and then it's sitting in your stomach and you wake up bloated. It's like that little cycle, I feel like, is the thing that stresses people out. And I think with tummy fat specifically, like, yeah, we know it's going to be a little bit stubborn, but you have the tools to change from the lifestyle perspective.
Also, another component of this is like under eating. Like you and I both see this with especially our female clients of chronically under eating. Like we've talked about this a couple times on the podcast, people eating 1,200, 1,500 calories consistently and then being frustrated that they're not losing weight. Because this often backfires, right? Like it's going to be harder for your body to let go when we're constantly putting it under stress. Stress being dieting, stress being your professional and personal stress. It's managing family systems, it's financial stress. It's all of these stressful inputs that we're putting in and not actually giving your body what it needs.
There's no shortcut, but there is a strategy. And you don't have to do and also doing a million crunches isn't even going to spot reduce your belly fat because it's actually going to it can create the illusion of making you even look like you have more tummy fat because the muscles grow. So really just focus on eating the right amount of nutrition for what your activity level is. That's going to be the biggest thing. And walking and drinking water.
And also training your abs. Like I think that you've had this epiphany recently and inspired me to have this epiphany lately, which is like, core is like kind of calves, right? Where you're like, oh, I don't need to do it. It's genetic. But the more you train the area, the more it will grow the muscles in that area. So I've been training more core lately, inspired by you.
I
So
think your abs, the way that they look is related to genetics, but if your abs
yeah,
are visible or not is not largely dependent on genetics. I think there's a lot of other things, right?
of
Is that what you're
course. Yeah.
saying? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the genetic component is like how lean you have to be in order to see that.
Right.
But they
Okay.
are
Yes.
muscles, right? Like you have the transverse abdominis, you have the abdominal muscles that actually need to be developed like any other muscle, right? Like just like your
Right.
back muscles or your shoulder muscles or your biceps, they still need to be developed. So you should work them. Don't like skip your core. But, we're going down a rabbit hole. Do you have any last minute thoughts on that?
I was going to say, like, if having core definition really feels monumentally important to you, and maybe you're not in a season of life of like being a caloric deficit, yes, training more abs can help, but specifically your obliques. Like when you look at someone's like ab, like doesn't your eye kind of look for like the side obliques first before it like really looks for like the six pack rigidity? It's like I feel like if someone's like decently like lean, doesn't have like ab definition, but has like
Yeah.
those oblique sides, like do some
Yeah.
Russian twists, do some side bends, like start there.
You'll definitely see those first for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So, moving on to question 3. This one is also anonymous. Did either of you ever fall into the misinformation trap that you learned from?
And I would love to hear you start this one off.
Yeah, so I actually really love this question because a few years ago, I was stuck in my own coaching with specifically women. I was feeling lost because they were feeling frustrated. And in my mind, I was like, okay, there must be an answer. So I'm going to go get my master's because there's got to be a hormonal component for women specifically that is, making this a lot harder. Everybody struggles with weight loss. It's not a missed concept on anyone, but women specifically tend to struggle. And, what I found with going to a master's, thinking like, okay, I'm going to learn what labs to run, what hormones to look at. And the answer that I came out with after 3 years of my master's program in nutrition was behavior change is just hard. It's not because of one specific hormone. It's just really hard to change behaviors, and it's hard to do it at a rate quick enough that we see the results that people want immediately. There's a lot of delayed gratification that comes with this. It takes a really skilled professional to speak with compassion, to speak with encouragement and education to help our clients see success. And I remember a point at the end of my master's program where there was like a big Facebook group for the entire year of cohorts. And someone was like, I finished this program and I still don't understand like what equals weight loss. It must be leptin. It's like, okay, that's one component of what could be holding someone's weight loss back, but it's not because of one specific hormone. It's not because of cortisol. It's not because of leptin. It's because behavior change
Leptin is your satiety hormone, by the way.
Right. And the reason why GLP-1s help is because they act on these hormones that reduce food noise, which, and food noise might be arbitrary if you don't know what that means, but you can probably imagine like a lot of people who grow up in a family system or socioeconomic status that made healthy eating difficult. Constantly think about food. And then if you think about the surroundings there, right? Like if you grow up in a low income community, you might have really easy access to Burger King or McDonald's or whatever, or you don't have a lot of healthy options available, or it's too expensive. And so all of these systems make losing weight difficult, not having time to go to the gym. So you can see how it compiles. And our job as good coaches is to find ways that we can bridge that gap for people. If that's not getting to the gym, it's okay, trying to do some body weight workouts at home, walking more, finding the low hanging fruit, getting that water in. Those are the low hanging fruit options. So that's the misinformation trap that I fell down, is what was, okay, it must be hormones. I need to go get a whole master's program in order to help solve this crisis.
Yeah. And I think that's why we even created this podcast, because there's so many traps that we fall into. Like it was honestly hard for even trained professionals like us. Like it was hard for me to like choose one. Like I think also being in fitness as long as we have, we've tried and exposed ourselves to like a whole bunch of different things. But the biggest one that I fell into was thinking that autophagy and like um, intermittent fasting was going to help me like achieve my dream body. And for a lot of people, it does kind of based on what you were saying, because it like shortens your feeding window. So you're like not as able to eat more calories in one sitting or your small window. But like I didn't have those because I was also doing keto at the time. So you tell me that I can get 4,000 calories in 4 hours. You better believe it when I'm eating keto, super high fat. And so the misinformation trap that I was fed was that if I delay my eating and shorten if I just intermittent fast, I'll lose body weight, lose body fat. That was the misinformation number one. Misinformation number two was that keto was going to help alleviate my cravings.
Yeah. Yeah. And theoretically, you'd think like, okay, it makes sense. If I reduce my hours that I'm eating to...
and only give myself fat, which is not glucose, which is not what my body like craves and wants, then I shouldn't have any cravings for it.
Especially as like a high endurance athlete. Yeah. But if you're like reducing that window to like, let's say 10 to 6 p.m., that sounds great in theory, but are you going to let that inner goat come out in those hours where you're eating everything, even including the kitchen sink? Like that's where we get stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that is the nuance. That's where the nuance lives. Because if you're saying, I want to do intermittent fasting because I want to lose body fat, you can totally do that. But if you're delaying your first meal until like 3 p.m. and then now your blood sugar is completely tapped, you're cranky, you are angry, you hate yourself, you've skipped your workout, like you're not productive at work. It's like, yeah, well, it's not really working for you. Like how much is it really worth it? Or maybe you intermittent fast for an hour or two so you can just make time for walking before,
I think this is a perfect segue into question number 5.
Which is from Melissa. When I encounter friends or family who are following fad diets or some kind of quote unquote hack, I know I can't just argue away changes to their entire behavior patterns with facts and such. When you encounter people who are way off track, what's the most impactful places to start with creating change? Is there a tactic or a topic that you feel like is a good entry point for behavior change?
You and I both definitely agreed on this. So I love this question. I think it's so good.
Whoever Alyssa is, I would like to formally request her to send at least 3 more questions in.
I can assuredly make sure of that. She's one of my clients. So
okay, great. Thank you, Alyssa. I would just say lead with curiosity. I know we were both talking about this on pre-recording, but like ask more questions. Like most people, no one is at a lack of having information.
Too much information.
It is what to do with the information that you're given and to actually understand what someone else's information is that they're leading with, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they're leading with Joe Rogan podcast and you don't even know that, right? So instead lead with curiosity. Hey, where did you get that challenge idea? Or who's done this before that you've seen it work for? Like getting curious from a non-judgmental place, because you're literally just gathering information about why and they're doing what they're doing, where it came from. So totally. I definitely don't jump in to fix it, but I'll ask them just to kind of walk me through their like buying or their decision process first.
And totally, I agree. And we know that nobody has ever changed or actually learned something from someone telling them that they're wrong, right? Like, imagine a situation where you believe something to be true in your core, and Brie, you're to come to me and be like, no, you're wrong. I'm not going to be open to changing my mind. I'm going to go on defense, right? So sometimes people are just going to have to learn the hard way or their own way. Choices are often emotionally driven, not logically driven, which we know. People tend to change when they feel safe to explore their options. So that's where it comes back to that, like getting curious. I agree with you, like asking them, like, where did this arrive? Like what feelings are making them go this route? And do you feel like you could do that long term? Like I think keto and intermittent fasting is a great question for those things. Like, do you think you can do that long term? And can I assist you if you're ready to try something different, or let them know that you'll be there if they change their mind? I think
these are family and friends. These are not your clients. So you don't have to change anything that they're doing. Like you could even ask, do you want my opinion? There's so many times where people are like, I'm doing this and this and this. I'm like, okay.
Great. Yep. Cool.
Do you want feedback, advice? Like, nice. Good for you. You're doing something. Yeah. Cool. Like,
I think it's always funny.
Go ahead.
I think it's always funny too, like at a party, like I'm sure that you've been out before and you tell someone you're a trainer or you're like do nutrition with people and they immediately go to like the questions. Oh, like, what should I do? What do you think about keto? What do you think about this? It's like, okay, if you want my opinion, I'm going to give you my opinion, but also you're not really paying me for my guidance. So like, I don't technically owe you anything. If I decide to like, I feel like going on my tangent, then like, sure, let's have at it. But I'm also not trying to argue with anyone at a party.
Right. Like if you're excited to tell me you're doing something new, I'm going to celebrate you and champion you no matter what. If you're like, what do you think about this? And be like, ooh, okay, that's a different conversation. Because a lot of time people don't need you to help them process what they're doing. They don't need you to tell them you should do that or don't do that. They really just want like a little bit of accountability and like support, and they want to be seen. You know, a lot of fitness is an inside job, especially when it comes to habit transformation, especially around nutrition and like movement and like sleep stuff. All of that is such an inside job that sometimes people just want to share what they're doing because it helps reconfirm the identity that they're trying to step into that's going to elicit the actual results that they want.
Totally. Couldn't agree more.
Cool.
I think people are also going to be more open to change when the suggestion aligns with something that they care about. So maybe you could reframe it with like, if you want to be more energized with your kids, change from like, frame it as like your habits around sustained energy and not macros, or not focusing on keto or whatever it is. If they are doing keto because their coworker lost weight or whatever their reason was, you could ask like, how does this version of eating make you feel in your body? How does it make you feel about your image? If they're seeing results and they're like, if they're in that stage of keto where they're still feeling good, you might just want to like let them ride that wave for a little bit.
When was that? What part of keto were we supposed to feel good? It certainly wasn't the beginning.
I think people do, like, because of, you know, they're taking away carbs, and carbs. Yeah. I'm going to say carbs, but glucose holds about 4 grams of water per gram of glucose. So you're inherently going to feel a little bit puffier or fuller. I don't want to say puffier because that just kind of like deters people from eating carbs, but you're going to feel full, which is that fullness in the muscles that we want, because your glucose or ultimately glycogen is going to be stored in your muscle and gives you that pumped full volume or toned of the muscles. So this is the reason why we want carbs, is we want to fill out your muscle volume. We want to fill out the muscle bellies. But yeah.
That is like such a light bulb moment. It's like eating carbs. Yeah, it actually like pumps up your muscles. It's not just pumping up your belly fat.
Right. It's not living in your fat. It's actually living in your liver or your muscles. At the end of the day, it's not our job to overhaul their behavior in one conversation. It's maybe to plant the door and plant the seed that they might want to walk through at a later time.
And say like, great, do that for 2 weeks. Let me know how it goes.
Yep.
And then that completely takes your responsibility out of it. And now they feel like they have accountability just like they wanted.
Yep. And you're probably more likely to be viewed as a trusted resource and a safe person to talk to if they know that they can just talk to you and you're not going to shut them down. So I'm definitely going to learn that lesson the hard way.
Yeah. And I feel like today's questions are all in like a really good theme. I feel like these have like a good flow to them, because question number 6 is about this as well. Like the routine, the prepping, the pre-planning. And the question is, what are the best meals that you don't get sick of? And I think when we have those learnings of like, ooh, my go-to when I'm like, just come back from a big trip and I have no food in the house, what do I eat? Yep. Or if I'm going out to a meal with a bunch of friends and it's a birthday dinner, what's like my health conscious choice, but I still get to have fun. So I actually love for you to start off this one, because you are our chef.
Okay. I will definitely tell you mine, but I'm curious about your little segment about what you gravitate to restaurants. So I'll say mine because mine's brief, and then I want to hear what yours is at restaurants. So my go-to meal that I could just like, if I'm feeling so lazy, no matter what, my husband and I meal prep every single Sunday, even if we're on vacation. Sometimes it's just a different day, but Sunday tends to be the day. If we're feeling lazy, it's always a ground turkey, seasoned, of course. We cook a rice in our rice cooker, and then we use the Taylor Farm salad kits. So we always get like the lemon poppy seed one. The dill pickle one is good. I think there's like an Asian one that's really good. Those are kind of like my easy go-to meal preps for dinners, because I like something a little bit more delicious. I will go for like a taco. So I'll get like just pre-cut steak and then some pre-cut peppers and onions, and then I make like a little fajita sauce, and then I just heat up some tortillas, and that's my dinners. So that's my easy go-tos.
Mine's kind of similar. I like that you said ground turkey. I usually will say like a more lean ground beef option, like a 93 to 95% lean. So I get a little bit of that dietary fat. So then again, it's like less time to like add another ingredient for a fat macro. So really like ground beef and rice, that's like my go-to because one, you can cook a package of ground beef on the stove in 10 minutes. And don't tell me that you can't. Like you can have 3 meals worth of food with those 2 ingredients in 15 minutes.
Yep.
So I would say that's the easiest, lower pressure. But I also would like to say for like things I don't get sick of, I don't get sick of that one, but if that sounds gross to you, then any variation of a salad, like anything with greens in it, like anything in a bowl, because you can always customize ingredients, customize portions. So if you just start with like a leafy green and a protein, anything else you put in there is based on your dietary preferences that day or your flavor profile that day. Sometimes I'll add rice to my salad. Sometimes I'll add canned chickpeas, not even seasoning them. Sometimes I'll literally put seasonings on my salad with a little bit of lemon juice and olive oil just as my dressing. Like, I think it's kind of choose your own adventure. As far as restaurants go, because if we were going to look at us, me over the last 2 years, I've definitely eaten out more often than I've eaten at home. And so most of the time, because I'm gluten and dairy free, like, and also a control freak, I'll suggest where we go to dinner so that I have a little bit of control of like just knowing that there's something that I can order from an allergy perspective, from like a macronutrient food quality perspective. You know, it's as simple as ordering from one of the entrees, whatever is the meat priority entree. If you're somewhere like an Italian restaurant, there's still the branzino. If you're at a Mexican restaurant, which is actually probably the best cuisine to eat out, but get your fajitas. If you're at a French restaurant, get a steak. I don't care if it has butter on it. Go for it. Like those are the types of things that I'll do. And then I'll always ask like what sides they come with and if I can swap things out. Like most restaurants, especially like on the West Coast, will have like a vegetable option. Like, can I have steamed veggies instead of the mashed potatoes if you wanted to do that? I mean, I'll probably keep like one more indulgent side and then one more like health conscious fiber color side.
That's
way
exactly
I can like
what I would do.
Perfect. And then sometimes if we're going for brunch though, brunch is a little bit of a different experience because breakfast at Baseline, the way that I order it and we order it, it's like a little more protein focused. But I want a bite of the table cakes. So typically if I'm out with friends, I'm like, all right, who wants to get table cakes? Because I just want a bite or two.
Sharing French toast with me because first off, French toast is not a meal. That is diabetes on a plate, which is freaking delicious. I want that. I want to eat at least one stick of French toast. But to your point, I want the sausage. I want the eggs. I want an eggs Benedict. Honestly, I want a bacon eggs Benedict because it's delicious. And I'm going to be satiated. Like with the French toast, you're probably going to be hungry in like an hour and a half.
You're going to be hungry in an hour and a half and your body's going to be like, what the fuck is all this sugar? Which you can help your body if you are like, yeah, I'm doing the French toast today. I had a workout. I'm metabolically like primed. I need some sugar right now, maybe. That's the best time to have something a little bit more indulgent. But maybe instead of like the full 2 pieces of French toast, Kelsey and I split. I get a piece or a half of a piece. And then I get a big old side of egg whites and a big old side of whatever else. And I think that that's actually a totally sustainable way to still enjoy indulgent foods and also enjoy having a positive relationship to food.
I agree. I love it.
It sounds like we'd be good brunch partners.
We would.
Well, we are.
So moving on to question 7 has to do with injuries. I know that we both experience a lot of injuries in our trajectory because they just happen, especially pain. Pain is just a signal. So the first question of this 3-part one is, when you have an injury, how do you work out around it without hurting other areas of your body?
Well, I know that you've struggled a lot with your back pain and I've struggled a lot with my knee pain. And I think when it comes to injuries, yes, you can work around it. Like if my knees are having a bad day, like they have been for the last week, my upper body sessions are amazing, but I'm not overtrained. I'm not doing like a full push one day, full pull, and then only upper body. It's like well, I can still do RDLs. I can still do glute bridges. I can still do hip abductions, clamshells. Like, even though they're a little bit more isolated of a movement, I can still honor the principles of resistance training by just swapping, like, okay, I'm going to swap back squats for a hip thrust. It's still a compound movement. I'm still going to get a similar dose response. May not be so targeted for the quads, which is good, but then I'll probably drop down load a bit and keep volume moderate to high. Probably like moderate, just so it's easier to recover from, and then just kind of like track the stimulus that I get.
Right. Yep. I think it's an interesting question because, like, how do you work out around it without hurting other areas? Which, exercise isn't inherently injurious, right? Like, we know that, like, a deadlift isn't inherently bad by itself. We know that there is form that you could optimize to move more efficiently. I think where injury tends to be more risky is when your loading or the amount of weight on the bar tends to be inappropriate for you. So it could be too much too soon or all at once. So if you're brand new, you walk into the gym and you deadlift 200 pounds for the very first time, that's probably going to be inappropriate for you. So that's where that risk of injury might be possible. Doesn't mean that it will happen, but your risk is probably higher than if you were to like have a more humble attitude of like, all right, let me just see, let me like get my first session in and do something that feels like RPE 5 or 6.
And I think for people who have been training a little bit longer, it's not even about an ego thing. I think it's just needing to know a little bit about what your own body can recover from. So if you notice that, okay, you're starting to feel good, you go to the gym and then you go shitty again, it's like, okay, well, that was too much volume or that was too much intensity for that specific body part or area that you are struggling with. So instead, what you might do is, to your point, okay, if usually I'm doing like 3 sets of everything, I'm going to drop it down to 1 or 2, like really high quality, good sets. And I'm not going to overtrain the other parts of my body. So if I was only doing 3 sets of dumbbell press last week, okay, I could do 3 or 4, but I'm not going to do 8 sets of dumbbell press now because I can't squat, And I think that's where the nuance is that if your training time is cut in half because I'm not doing like my lower body, like knee specific stuff, then maybe that other half of the training time is spent doing mobility and walking and, other forms of like smaller isolated movements that feel really good in my body that aren't really at risk of overtraining. I would like to see someone try to overtrain. Actually, never mind. I don't want to dare anybody listening to this. But
I think too, it's important that you and I both have had little bouts of back pain. I think a lot of women that I know experience back pain, and that's related to a lot of things, right? It could be overtraining. It could be a program that's inappropriate for them. It could be pelvic floor health, which is an under talked about topic. And I think it's becoming more talked about, which I love. But, we tend to like hold in our pelvic floor or your ab muscles to appear skinnier, or maybe that's just where you hold stress is in your lower hips or lower abdomen. Even like intimate relationships can trigger your pelvic floor. Like a lot of these things can add stress to the pelvic floor, which ultimately causes back pain. So I had a lot of back pain. I've talked about this on previous episodes where I was standing on my feet for 6-7 hours at a time coaching clients. I ended up lifting up bars with clients, pretty poorly positioned, just like kind of like shrimp lifting them where your back is all rounded.
Right.
So it was just like an accumulation of stress on my body where my back was like, I have had enough. And ultimately I had to stop squatting, benching, and deadlifting temporarily and like loading my spine and those movement patterns specifically, I learned that felt bad for my back. It's not that those things are inherently injurious. It was just too much at that time with the given dose of everything else going on in my life. So I had to do a lot of pelvic floor specific things like, laying on the floor, doing a glute bridge march. Like that's just the reality of what my program was for a few months. I did a lot of leg press. I did a lot of leg extensions. I did very like isolated movements where my back didn't really have to work very hard, and taking ample time off to manage the stress that was happening in my life and manage my schedule really was what got me through the pain and ultimately squatting, deadlifting, and benching again.
Yeah. I think fueling can be another aspect to look at here too. If you're in a season of kind of like ebbing and flowing, like wanting to be all in and then getting hurt again and wanting to be all in, like, and you're doing this kind of like wave pattern, well, your nutrition probably it needs to be more consistent too, because if you're not training for a week at a time, what does your energy demand look like? If you're training really hard for a week, what does that look like? Like, are you eating the lower amount on the week that you're training really hard? You know? And the other thing is that if you are dealing with what kind of sounds like for her a more chronic injury, then it's probably a great thing to dial back the volume of your training, keep the intensity really, really high on the other things that you can do that are not going to risk your injury. And then on the other side, like I was saying before, maybe that time that you have kind of quote unquote left over is actually spent doing PT work, because that's the one thing that people suck at doing.
Is like, I was just going to say that.
It's really, and we have friends that are PTs that will say, like, the hardest thing about it is getting your patients to stay consistent and not come back to the office and say, oh, I haven't done these clamshells since I saw you last. So I actually think that if you're someone who's struggling with injuries, this is actually a great thing for you. This could be actually a huge change to your routines and how you approach routines, because you know that you have to do this thing consistently to get what you want. And there's nothing more motivating than pain.
I agree. And I think it's also worth saying that I think people tend to follow a trajectory, right? Like, try it yourself. Yep, great, did it. Then you hire a coach. Yep, great, did it. Maybe it's still not working. You still have pain. Go to physical therapy, find a good physical therapist, because the way that you will learn about your body, and this is a good physical therapist. There's plenty of physical therapists, chiropractors, whatever, that are shitty. Personal trainers, sure. There's some bad ones, but there are some really good ones, and you want to find those really good ones, and hopefully your insurance covers them. A lot of them, unfortunately, don't take insurance because our insurance system sucks, but there are some really good ones where you can actually learn how to move your body. So it might be expensive up front, but you're going to have tools to carry with you for the rest of your life. Like, learning how to brace is so important for managing back pain and being able to control your core. Learning how to externally rotate at the femur for knee pain is so important. And, you know, just by saying that, the listener might be like, what the fuck does that mean? But going to physical therapy can help you understand how you should be moving. Like, when I did physical therapy for my shoulder a couple times, I saw our friend Dom. I was literally like, wow, even myself, who's been training and coaching for over 10 years, I'm like, I clearly don't know how to move my own body. And it's always,
or I don't know what it's capable of. It's not that you don't know how to move your own body. It's that you don't even know that you're capable of higher quality of movement just from like a simple cue or focus, right? Like when Dom or a PT puts their hands on you and is like, breathe into this or move in this way or resist me. It trains your brain to make connections with those things. So I completely agree.
I always thought I was like squeezing my scaps or like pulling my shoulder blades together, but Dom would be like, no, more. And I'm like, I literally can't. But like, we ended up squeezing it better because he is professional. He's got that objective insight to look at me and like show me what I'm doing and how it should feel. And those like small little physical therapy exercises end up being so much harder than your back squat or your deadlift or your lat pull down or whatever it is. So it's worth going to physical therapy.
It is. And I actually think you should date your physical therapist. No, but you should
would like a word.
Marielle, no. But like, I think that if you leave your PT session or two and you're kind of like, I don't know if I'm actually learning more about my body, don't go back. Like, use your health insurance to go find somebody else. Look for sports performance specifically. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably need a sports performance specialist, like physical therapist, or at least someone who just is aware of sports. Like, I think that's actually a big differentiator when searching. And then the other thing is that same thing with like you wouldn't just choose a therapist and be like, this is the one I'm going to tell my entire life to. Your body, you only get one. So it's the same thing. Like, I think it's worth it to like look around and really ask for referrals and talk to them before you go and say like, what am I going to walk away learning?
Yeah. What's the plan look like for my care? And I think a lot of physical therapists tend to lean on soft tissue work without a lot of the exercise rehab. And that's where that bridge between physical therapy and getting back to regular movement lives. Like, that's where the success is like, yes, the soft tissue stuff might be important, but we need you to be doing specific exercises to get you better and get you back into full action again.
Yeah. And so I think to answer, and so those were the first two questions. If you have an injury, how do you work around it without overtraining other areas? Kind of what she was saying. And then two, if you continue to get injuries when you start becoming more consistent, and then kind of like that stop start, how do you fix it? And then the last one is, why are injuries happening primarily on one side of my body? And there are a couple of reasons why this could happen. And, you know, the body is such a complex system. I would typically ask them like how they sleep and how they sit first, because that's how we spend the majority of our hours that like could potentially open up the door for compensation patterns. So if you sleep on your side, that could be it. If you sleep on your stomach and your head's turned, you know, that could be it. If you're sitting always with the same leg crossed over and then your hips are kind of shifted down and it pulls on your piriformis and, you know, all that, that could be it. Anything else that you could think of?
It's a complicated question that doesn't really have like one answer. It could just be like bad programming too. Like we've talked about in like building out a program episode where like if you're only training in one dimension, like forward movement, think of like a lunge, think of a squat, think of like anything where you're only moving forward. Maybe you're not taking care to move laterally or rotationally. Like we want to have a well-developed program. So maybe it's just time to reevaluate that. That could be a concern too. That's the only thing that I would add.
Yeah, so that's a great call. That's one thing I really wasn't thinking of, is that if you're right-handed or like dominant on one side, which most of us are, then when I'm like driving in the car and like reaching back and like reaching for things, like I'm using my right side more. So if I'm not doing a lot of that rotational work balanced on both sides, you know, for the 1 hour of my workout, you know, then I can't possibly like assume that I'm going to have the resiliency when real life happens. But I would say that my like greatest hits for like, maybe we can just give this person, like there are like 2 or 3 greatest hits movements for like back pain specifically. Like I'm really dealing with some bulging discs on my left side. So like the runner's lunge to thoracic rotation, like the world's greatest stretch has been like so helpful in managing my pain and like being able to continue moving. And then also scapular push-ups. So if I'm like on my forearms, like a forearm plank, and I'm like kind of doing like what feels like a cat cow, but it's like up and down just with the shoulders, that opens up and like unlocks my upper thoracic spine so much.
Yep. I agree with all those. I think like definitely thoracic mobility is of concern. I think when you like lay with your mid back on a foam roller, just kind of like rounding over and crunching over, like that could be a good one. I would add half kneeling windmills, great for shoulder stability, hip stability, core strength, balance. That's my heavy hitter these days. And then moving like with complementary movements. Like lately I've been doing a banded rotation with a shoulder press. So one arm is doing like a fly while the other one is pressing. So being able to do 2 complementary movements at what time. I don't want to get too lengthy and too breathy here, but Bree has one more thing.
The McGill 3 obviously is like the tried and true. Any physical therapist you go to is going to tell you to do that. So if you haven't looked into the McGill 3 or tried it, go to Squat University's YouTube and follow his kind of walkthroughs on how to perform that. Because those and clamshells, I think is the kind of the magic recipe that most physical therapists will give you, kind of as like a baseline foundational start.
If you were to go at it yourself, that's where I would start too.
Yeah.
So that's all we have for today. This was part 2 of the question and answer series. We will probably keep collecting your questions and do more episodes, but next week we have a couple options for you for an episode. Would you guys like to hear about Bree moving to Chicago and her time so far? Or the tried and true creatine topic? Because this was going to be a topic or a question on today, but it's so lengthy that it deserves its own episode. And obviously this episode is getting a little windy here. So 2 options, Bree in Chicago or creatine. We will put a poll in the notes. So check that out. And thank you for joining us. We loved answering your questions.
Please follow and connect with us on Instagram. That's kind of like our main social media source right now is Instagram, overt_thinking podcast on Instagram. And then follow us as well, kelsiemichelle, KELSIE Michelle, and then briannalamb. And also like if you take away anything fun or you've tried something that we've talked about in this podcast, it might seriously be the biggest highlight of our year if you just tagged us and showed us what you're working on and how you're using this information, or even just having this experience with us is helping you in your real life.
This is the community, baby, and we will see you in the next episode.